everybody. My name is JC Calderon. I'll be moderating tonight's discussion titled The Yale School of Management, Then and Now. Tonight's show is part of an ongoing series that the Yale Alumni Association has been putting on through their Careers, Life in Yale committee, of which I'm a member, that has been exploring topics for alumni in various themes. One theme that we've chosen to focus on is the then and now of a Yale program. So tonight's show will focus on the then and now of the School of Management and how its mission and perhaps its, or more specifically, how its degrees have evolved, degree offerings. Tonight's show is also a collaboration of the SOM and alumni leaders of the SOM. And as I mentioned, I'm currently on the committee that runs this show as part of the Board of Governors. And I'm also a graduate of the School of Architecture. So the shows that we've been putting on Thursdays throughout COVID have now amounted to over 120 shows, or maybe someone else can elaborate that more clearly later on. But basically, we are grateful tonight for our guests and esteemed panel of alumni and students of the School of Management. We have 5 members of the SOM community, 4 alumni, and 1 who's about to graduate from the program. The bios are all listed on our email, so I'm not going to repeat that, but please read the bios. They're fascinating careers and experiences of all our members tonight. We are joined by Claudia Gordon, a class of 78, and Jill Bauman, class of 87, Fei Chen, class of 08, Tony Lin, a class of 14, and a current graduating student, Wei Ri Lee, class of 23. So what we're going to do tonight is we're basically going to have everyone speak about their experiences in chronological order, try to get a sense of the changes and the things that didn't change at the school and have not changed, and what makes the School of Management unique. So we're going to start by having Claudia Gordon speak about her experiences, the program that she chose. As it's mentioned in the profile, a number of degrees have been added throughout the year. So if anyone throughout the evening wants to speak about the different degrees to help us who are not part of the SOM community understand better the variety of offerings, we'd appreciate that. But so we're going to start tonight with Claudia, and then go on to the other alumni in the order in which they attended the school. So without any further ado, Claudia, please.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everybody. I was in the charter class, which is the first class, and one of a grand total of 47 students. I chose Yale because of its mission. The degree I got was a master's in public and private management. And I was very interested when I joined the school in understanding the differences in the management of the public sector versus the private sector, and wanted to understand how I might be able to impact either or both of those sectors. I also hoped to move from one sector to the other, as did most of my classmates. When I graduated, I joined Smith Barney in corporate finance, and for almost 17 years, I worked at various financial firms in a variety of financial sectors. Then I started specializing in the healthcare sector, and I financed not-for-profit hospitals and other senior housing facilities, which was my version of switching sectors. I continued in that until my retirement, which was just this last September. And now I have my own consulting company where I'm focusing and working with a couple of healthcare companies. Let me take a moment to describe what it was like in the first years. First of all, we were all in one room in Sachem Hall, which we called the Pizza Hut. Teachers came in and out of the classroom the way they did when you were in grade school. We were on the admissions committee. We helped determine the curricula. We criticized the case studies and generally very noisily gave our opinions about how and what we should be taught. Definitely building the plane while it was flying. It was exciting, chaotic, confusing, and we had a lot of fun. So with that, I will pause and see if anyone has any immediate questions, and then pass it on as you want, JC.
Well, yeah, that's I think basically we want to get a sense of what you think.
Jason, I had one question, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So it's Jeff Feldman, on the board of governors with JC in class of 95 at SOM. And I guarantee this is going to be a really interesting and robust evening together. And there'll be a lot of questions and a lot of interesting dialogue back and forth. I had a simple nuts and bolts question, just to sort of get us rolling a little bit. As you know, the in-between year now is kind of a whole thing, right? Where did you do your intern? It's sort of going to forge your pathway for where you're going to go, you hope, et cetera. Was it like that in that first few years? What the hell
we had a variety of ages. We had one woman who was quite a bit older, who had been a mother, and she came back to school. I was pretty much out of school. I had a BA. I went and got a master's from the Fletcher School. So I'm one of the young ones. I think there were four of us in that cohort. Most of the people had 3 to 5 years of experience in a variety of sectors. People were doing not-for-profit, they were doing public, they were doing private. One of the motivations for many of my classmates was sector switching. And that was important. So it was, there were only 47 of us, but we pretty much hit every demographic. Anything else?
I didn't mean to derail you. Keep going, JC.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was muted. Jill, if you want to sort of share your story, but maybe you could elaborate. I wasn't clear. Jeff was explaining that there's a middle year.
I'm saying that between the years, you've got your big internship. You got to go. These days it's banking, consulting, you're fighting. Or wherever you're doing. I'm just wondering if those between years, was there still that madness, or didn't really exist?
I'll just quickly say yes, there was. And because it was a new school, right, there was no way of, you don't have anybody to lean on. And so we did a lot of hitting the pavement, but people were very interested to figure out what it was. So most people didn't have too much of a problem getting some kind of a position for the summer.
Well, thank you, Claudia. Jill, so we're going to everyone's going to take a shot at sort of paint a picture of their experience, and then we can have a general discussion at about 8:30 as well.
Hi, everybody. Jill Bauman, and I'm class of 87, so about 10 years-ish later. And 10 years later, still an MPPM, but we now have our own building. And our class size is about 180. So significant growth. Very, very rooted in organizational behavior. And most classes, there was some within the case format, there was still some, there was sector analysis. Like it wasn't just from a corporate or just from a private or just from a nonprofit or just from a public lens. There was constant, you were seeing those points of view being discussed in almost every class I took. In terms of why I went there, I was a software engineer before they were called such a thing, coming out of college. So helped design first generation software system. I mean, not software, but actually management information systems. And, was a Lotus 1-2-3 beta tester. I mean, that's sort of dating me. But anyway, I had learned that skill and learned how important it was, but I was interested in industry potentially shifting, but also having really strong rooting in values. And in fact, when I was choosing between business schools and public policy, I was just trying to figure that out. What I ended up doing is taking an ethics class at Harvard, at Stanford, at the public policy school at Woodrow Wilson in Princeton, and at Yale at SOM. And it was an immediate for me when I was at SOM that my values aligned, that this place was not a place that was just about the money. They were already doing double and triple line valuation before it was really called that. So that's why I went, had a fantastic time. I used my summer internship. I wasn't to go try another sector. I mean, not a sector, another industry. And I did hotel and resort workouts. I was really interested in the intersection of real estate and operations in hotels. And then I ended up going to an investment bank that specialized in that. Afterwards, I paid off my debt and got out of there as fast as I could. It was not for me. I'm much more an entrepreneur and basically have been an entrepreneur since then, starting and running and sometimes selling 3 different for-profits, and now I'm on my second nonprofit. And I think that hits the points. Did I get it, JC?
Yeah. No, that's great. No, thank you for sharing that perspective. And one of the things that I see people adding their sort of profile, if everyone could do that, that would be wonderful. And also feel free to elaborate on your name, what class you were in, so we can get a sense of what people's history is, or relationship, or year. But so yeah, that's wonderful, Jill. And Fei Chen, class of 08, if you want to sort of carry us further now, a few years past Jill.
Sure. Thanks for that, JC. So I'm Fei Chen, Yale SOM, class of 2008. I also am a member of the Yale SOM Alumni Advisory Board, along with Tony, Jill, and Claudia. So that's been a wonderful experience to give back to the school. So I was part of the Yale full-time MBA program in 2008, which at the time was the only degree offered by the school. My class size was about 180, which was a really lovely size. We had 3 cohorts of about 50, 60 students, and it was a really great way to become really close to my fellow classmates, but also get the broader perspective of having 180 students. So it really was a really wonderful time in my life. What attracted me to SOM was really the school's focus on not just business, but really both business and society. I know that for SOM, business and society is a slogan, but it really is truly a mission. And at the time, everyone I met, all my fellow classmates, all had that mission-driven bent, even if we worked in all different sectors. So for me personally, prior to business school, I worked at JP Morgan in investment banking, but my undergrad degree was in international relations. And so I just wanted a business school that wasn't just about finance and the numbers and investing. I wanted a business school that was strong in econ and strong in finance, but also cared about something more and had a global perspective. And so one of the things about my program was that at the time it was, we had a new dean, Joe Podolny, and we had a new curriculum that was called the integrated curriculum. And it was also the first year where they pioneered a new program called the Global Perspective. I think now it's called the International Trip, but there was a international component that was required as part of the curriculum. And that was something that really drew me to the program. And so I felt like the degree wasn't just an MBA, but it also was a degree in poli-sci and international relations. And it just gave me so much of what I wanted out of not just the business school, but just a graduate school experience. The people I met were great. Everyone was so intelligent and nice and caring, and it really was a wonderful experience. I would say it's definitely helped to inform so many things in my career. I didn't end up being a career switcher. However, I did stay in investment banking. I've been at Morgan Stanley for the past 15 years or so, initially on the investment banking side. But then in the past 10 years or so, I've been in our, as an investor in our private credit and private equity division. But I think what it has done, it's informed a lot of the mission that I try to bring into investing. So for example, 15 years ago, and even before that, SOM has always been talking about impact investing well before impact investing became a trendy topic that it is today. And so I think having that basis has helped me to kind of advocate for some of those missions in a corporate setting. And hopefully we can make some progress on that front. So it's a quick summary, but happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Faye. That was fascinating. It sort of reminded me of when I was a student at the School of Architecture. I mean, one of the things that I would like people to speak about a little bit is the joint offerings, because I know the School of Architecture at the time offered my classmates and myself the opportunity to look at the SOM, and I think one of my classmates took up that offer, but I'm curious what your thoughts are on that, because I know the School of Architecture at least does still promote or offer or suggest that there could be joint programs with the SOM, and I'm curious what people think, what stories you have to share about those joint degrees. But
should I answer? Yeah, that's a great point. So several of our classmates were joint degrees. So we had several classmates that were joint degrees with the law school, several that were joint degrees from the medical school. We have a few in public health and a few from the Jackson School as well. And so it really made for a very, I think, diverse and robust conversation when it came to the classroom. And I think the one thing, or one of the many things that's also unique about SOM is how well integrated it is into broader Yale. So as an SOM student, we were able to take classes all across Yale. And so I think that was a really important aspect of the program as well.
And I'll just very quickly mention that actually started in the first year. We had joint degree program in the first year. I took some classes at the law school. And there was also a big emphasis on the international piece that you mentioned. So a lot of those pieces got started very early, and we need to live time for the rest here.
Yeah, absolutely. I did the same. I took law school classes, was on the Journal of Regulation. Yeah, it was really wonderful.
Yeah. Well, before we go on to Tony Lynn, I remember the day getting a letter asking me if I would consider applying, and I remember feeling so burnt out as a student. It was like inconceivable of me to keep studying, but in retrospect, I wish I had reconsidered it. Anyway, Tony Lynn, why don't you share with us your story?
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, everybody, I'm Tony Lynn. I'm class of 2014. And our class size at that point was around 250 students. Also, I was in the last class that was in the old building prior to moving to Evans Hall. We moved to Evans Hall the second semester of my second year. So I got a chance to get some of the new experience, but the majority of my experience was in the older building. And while at SOM, I also did take classes all across the board. That was one of the things that brought me there. when I joined, we had a new dean as well, Dean Snyder, who had been there for 1 year. And he created a pretty interesting value proposition for a business school. He wanted to have a school that was global and truly global. He wanted a school for elevated leadership. And he wanted to make sure that SOM was the school that was most closely associated with his home campus, which he saw as a competitive advantage. So I honestly, that value proposition just rung really well with me. I was also transitioning out of the public sector. I had previously worked in the Obama administration on Capitol Hill. And I was actually looking for a school very similar to my fellow panelists, which gave me an opportunity to immerse myself in business, but also share some of those values that I had around how do we, support the bigger picture. And so my decision to go to business school was really around how can I accomplish some of the things I was trying to accomplish in the public sector a little bit faster and a little bit more efficiently. So SOM, when I had a chance to visit, it just really just nailed all those things home. And I would also want to say that the people really sold me. So SOM wasn't necessarily my first choice when I started applying. And when I got into all my schools, it wasn't my first choice. But it ended up being the best choice. And I ended up walking away from scholarships and all types of other things, largely because I began engaging with the alumni community. And I was just amazed. I could see past the facade that some of the other schools had, where you felt as though, there's these interesting names and intriguing experiences by some of the alums. But when I interacted with people from SOM, I felt like they already cared about me. They already cared about, me being a valuable part of the community. And so that really resonated with me. It became, I just became one of those like more passionate, true believers in the school. So yes, that's what led to my choice. As far as what I decided to do with the education, so as I mentioned, I was a career switcher. I knew that I was going to have to work to be competitive in the market, to develop marketable skills. The one thing that I was fairly confident that I would be good at was marketing. And that was largely because I had a marketing undergrad, and politics, I could kind of see the connection points. So my second year, I got an internship in product management, where I did a lot of marketing for a medical device company. Once again, got a chance to operate in sectors that support the greater good, but also business. I took the consulting offer, like a lot of people do. I also was fortunate enough to get involved with a startup, a nanotech startup, while in school. So I got that experience as well. I did consulting for 4 years, and then I got an opportunity to come to Meta, which most people know as Facebook. And I actually took that offer because the role was supporting small businesses. And so what as I was going through the recruiting process, what I began to understand was that the whole focus is making small businesses successful on the platform. And if small businesses are successful on the platform, I saw this opportunity to improve the plight and empower a global community. And that's what I've done. I've had this opportunity to build up unique businesses at Meta. I ran our Instagram small business portfolio for years. And I'm just always still excited from a day-to-day with this opportunity of empowering small businesses to reach their full potential on our platform. And as Faye said, I'm also have the great privilege to serve on our alumni advisory board. Been able to do that for the past 5 years now, going into my 5th year, I should say. And still very just on fire and excited for the community.
Excellent, Tony. Thank you so much. That reminds me of a couple of things I wanted to share. Before I forget, I wanted to acknowledge and thank Matt Broder, who's the chair of the Alumni Advisory Board, for helping us assemble this panel tonight, as well as Courtney Lightfoot, who's the managing director of alumni relations for the school, for as well helping us assemble the panel. But one of the things that Jeff Feldman and Robin Mendelson and others have helped with the Board of Governors is we're really there to help engage alumni, right, throughout the university's universe. But so I've become much more aware of the variety of alumni engagement at all the schools, not just the school that I came from, which was architecture. And it's definitely very clear that the SOM alumni are engaged relatively much more than most schools. And so that's certainly speaks well of the school's ability to, have alumni that care about the school. I know that, for example, if you go to a homecoming game or on campus, the SOM tent is always, I think, the loudest, which is wonderful. But anyway, so if we can keep going on, we're now joined by a current student, Wei Ru Lee, class of 23. So why don't you speak to us about your experiences at the school these past couple of years and your thoughts on the future?
Of course. First of all, it's truly delightful to hear from, many different generations of our alumni to share about, what their SOM was like for them. So for me, I'm in the class of 2023, just had my commencement rehearsal today, so about to graduate next Monday. So I've been here for 2 years, and it's absolutely been a very wonderful journey on campus. I serve as the Alumni Affairs Chair on the Student Government, which gave me a lot of chance to work with our wonderful Alumni Advisory Board to create many student alumni engagement events, including summer socials in major US cities, and also meet and greet. And also Tony came back in this past year and, to give like a speaker event, and also many more. I also worked with our wonderful alumni relations office, launched our first ever alumni appreciation week. So all of these, just like makes my SOM journey so much more meaningful than I thought. So my pre-SOM career was in finance, and I did not come in as a career switcher. I was very ready and comfortable to go back in finance. But still, I think, Yale SOM was like a good program for me to join, to pursue my MBA, because I don't want to go to like a finance or quant heavy MBA program. I work in finance like through and through. For my MBA, I want to spend these 2 years to meet as many diverse people as possible, to really explore and expand my horizon, and to truly understand different sectors of things. So I think our student body is like very, very diverse. People come from all kinds of sectors, and people are going to go into different sectors. So it's been quite like a learning journey, and I feel very lucky that my entire 2 years are spent in Evans Hall, which is a wonderful, gorgeous building that's very tech savvy, very modern. So I got lucky because we started our MBA right after the school kind of resumed from the COVID mode. So my first year, even though we were in person, we still have to wear a mask, but it was fully everyone in person in a classroom. So that was also very special. So did I miss any points on this?
No, just you can share your thoughts on I now, as we explained in the email text, there are many different offerings. I mean, so if you have any thoughts on the current program, or want to share with perhaps older alumni who may not be aware of what's been going on in the last year, anything new that you'd like to share with the alumni?
Yeah, for sure. So our MBA class size is about 350 people. And on top of that, we also have like EMBA cohort of 60 or 70 people every year. And then we also offer various master's programs, including master's in asset management, master's in advanced management. And we also have a GBS program, which is created in collaboration of many B schools around the world. And then we also have a master's program in systematic risk. And I believe last year we just launched our very first cohort of broad education center. So it's like, MBAs are definitely not the only program at SOM.
Thank you, Wei. But before I forget, I want to share or mention that we also have, we're being joined tonight by other members of the Board of Governors, Stephanie Grilly, Monica Advocate, and Nick Kaki are here with us as well as a former board member, Rob Greenlee. And if I'm missing anyone else, please let me know. I don't know all the former board members but again, we plan for a more general discussion at this point. If anybody has a particular question or comment, please add it to the chat, and we'll discuss that in a few minutes. But in general, I guess I was interested in anyone's thoughts on comparing and contrasting experiences. Claudia, you want to say something?
Yeah, before we get to that, because a lot of people have mentioned the dean that they were under. When we started, it was Donaldson, right? Dean Donaldson was the dean. He was also a professor. And we had, yes, a heavy OB cohort. We also had a large finance side. Each of the professors that we had were stellar in their field. They all came to experiment at Yale, basically, because they were given a lot of freedom. And so we had a very extraordinarily strong faculty, which made our classes quite unique and interesting. And as somebody who hadn't worked, sometimes over my head.
Thank you. And again, I haven't had a chance to read all the comments, but if anybody has something they'd love to share right now, feel free, raise your hand so we can know. Jill?
I just like to add, Wayru, thank you. And by the way, Wayru has just been an amazing part of our alumni board. This last year, we feel more engaged with the current students than I think we ever have. And thanks to you and your comrade. But I don't know that this really came through, but half of the student body at SOM now are international students. That's a huge shift over time. It's there, there was I think it was Schneider, one of the deans that has been mentioned, really got this did this huge push. And over time, we built these different programs that are either completely anchored in global studies or really attract international students to come for a year for an extra master's or so forth. So I think it's phenomenal. And it appears that not only are a lot of the international, I don't know how much science we have around this, but not only are the international students attracted by Yale, the brand, but they're also the AND society is still very much a driving force of why they're coming and choosing Yale. So I just, I thought I've learned this over this, getting involved with the alumni board and getting more involved in and really seeing what's happening at Yale now. At SOM now.
Anybody else on the panel want to share their thoughts on that topic? Like what's stayed and has been good, and what how things have changed? Organizational behavior is the OB, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and I think that went through a period where there were some, the faculty left. It's been a little bit disrupted, but I know that there's a lot of energy now to shore that up and bring that back to where it was.
I read a little bit about the Broad Center and the Broad Center. Yeah, the Master of Management Studies. Can someone speak about that program? It seems relatively new. Is that correct?
Maybe Jeff's got it. He's got his hand up.
I can
Jeff, do you know it? I can speak a little bit, but
I can speak to it. This is Robin Mendelson.
Oh, great. Hi, Robin.
Yeah,
Great.
I serve on the advisory board for the Broad Center, and it is the Broad Center, and if any others who may be Broad Fellows or former Broad Fellows or maybe involved, please jump in. It was originally a sort of freestanding foundation that offered fellowships for public K through 12 leaders to accelerate their advancement in the administration of K through 12 schools, to become superintendents, et cetera. And Eli and Edith Broad made a gift to Yale just about 3 years ago, just as Dean Charles was arriving, and it has established this Center for Public Education Leadership at SOM. There's a new master's in education now offered by SOM, as well as some additional fellowships that are all funded and for, really to build leadership skills and diversity within public education school leaders. So again, reinforcing business and society. And the center is really actively trying to both keep active and engage a very large body of former cohorts, but also bring all of what Yale has to offer to these great leaders in education. So.
And Robin, that's a one-year program, right?
Yes, I believe so. There are a few separate one-year programs, as I understand it, and I think maybe 2 or possibly 3, and now maybe working on a graduate program as well. But the master's program is new, and I think there's maybe only 1 year that it has gone through.
And it's free.
It is funded by the gift from the Broad Center, as well as the Broad family, as well as I'm certain that are funds from Yale's the SOM operating budget that fund these leaders. But yes.
Fantastic program.
So Rob Greenlee, you have your hand up. You haven't spoken. Please share. Let us know.
Hi, thanks. Class of '83. I just had my 40th reunion, I guess 2 weekends ago, and I saw Claudia and Tony and several others there. It was great to be in the new building. I just want to comment on the organizational behavior influence in the school. It was so critical to the atmosphere and the engagement of students. For those of you who don't know, your first day at SOM, you get in a group of 60 or so, and you form a dyad with one other person. Then the 2 dyads form a quad, and the 2 quads get together to form a group of 8, and that becomes your basis for your individual and group behavior class the first year, where you do experiential exercises, like if you're lost in the desert and tape recorded, and you really understand the dynamics of going through. And what I've heard over and over again at SOM and since is that many people didn't really pay that much attention to IGB or organizational behavior because, finance and other things. But as they went out in the world further and further in their career, that became much more important and much more things that they drew upon as they become more senior leaders. So just that was the reason I came to SOM, was because of the organizational behavior. I was one of the few people that this is why I'm drawn to the school, but I think has impacted almost all the alums. And I know there's currently are study groups. They're not quite the same as IGB, but I think hopefully that tradition will continue and be emphasized more. As Claudia said, there's been we got an update in the faculty when we were there, and they are trying to rebuild. The OB department's gone up and down. They're trying to rebuild it now.
I just have to say, Rob, that our class, when we get together, we still talk about the desert fox.
and who chose salt tablets versus
exactly.
Yes, right.
Sorry, you
inside joke. Thank you.
We have about 20 minutes left. I do want to share with you an anonymous comment that I'd love people to discuss. Not that controversial, but still it wants to stay anonymous. The question is here, says, as a current student, there seems to be differing views on whether the school is living up to its mission not just in terms of academics, but also culture, extracurriculars, admissions, and recruiting. Some students feel like there's too much emphasis on society, while others feel SOM is no longer a leader in mission-driven business education. Has this discussion always existed in past years, and any thoughts on how to navigate this discussion going forward? Anybody want to
Yes.
tackle that?
I'll just say yes, let Tony talk.
Yeah, absolutely. We had several of these existential debates come to a head, because when Dean Snyder came to SOM, a lot of the outside perception, he came from the University of Chicago. The outside perception was that his hire was to bring the school a little bit into the norm with traditional business schools. I think that it was there as a healthy debate, but what I saw was that though the outcomes that students began to pursue were a little bit more private sector in nature, the underlying DNA of how do you answer these questions, which hit at multiple different levels, with a broad bent on how do they impact society, was just kind of built and baked into the whole system. And so, though I think that we have a lot of classmates who, always intended to go into more capitalistic pursuits, I think that they chose because they thought there was something a little bit different and special about this unique culture. And I think that those who didn't realize, I'm thinking about my best friend who's a CEO of a software company, they just found themselves kind of bought in to this whole community aspect of the school. So I don't know that it needs to be this in-sum game of the outcomes being that we're sending, 50% of our class into the public, private, social sector, public or social sectors for us to be living up to the mission. But I think what it is that we need to be educating our students so that they're able to really understand the impact of whatever the business or whatever the activities they do after school, how that nets up into this greater, bigger picture of society. And I think it's absolutely there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Wei-Ri, you wanted to? Yeah, please.
Yeah, for sure. So I've definitely heard about this question a lot. I think the beauty of being in, pursuing your MBA at SOM is like, our curriculum is like flexible enough, right? First year you have the core mandatory 10 classes that covers like different competencies and areas of expertise like every educated MBA should have. And your second year, you can pursue whatever electives you want, right? So for me, I'm personally very interested in psychology, organizational behavior, and also finance. So I was able to take these courses not only just in SOM, but also at Yale College. And also I was able to take courses at Yale School of the Environment as well. And I have many classmates taking class at Yale Law School, also like drama school, wherever you want, right? So I think our program has enough flexibility for everyone to truly pursue what they want, whether it's like purely business or purely society, right? Nobody's going to tell you what you should do or should not do. And also in terms of like mission, like I think compared to some of the earlier classes, I think our MBA program right now, it really does look very much like a traditional, typical, normal MBA program. But I think still like most of my classmates, if not all, still care about impact on society very much. Even if they are pursuing a career in the private sector or in a traditional MBA career path, the mission is definitely not lost. Like for example, I have friends pursuing like investment banking kind of a career, but they would specifically look for like public financing, or they would only look for renewable energy financing. And then I have friends who are pursuing like venture capital investing, but they only want to do climate change related. I think it would be like a very narrow way to think about people's pursuit of impact and their pursuit of mission based on the career path. I think there are many ways to measure impact.
Yeah, I think that's thanks for sharing with us. I mean, one of the things that in general I would suggest the university is definitely moving towards is a more interactive sort of strategy where schools, students overlap much more than they ever have, in terms of like architecture students, overlapping programs with the school and the environment, et cetera. And, you know, the world is more complex than ever. So it's great that that the School of Management can respond to that. But anybody else have another? Monica, you had your hand up. Sorry, in calling you sooner, and then Jeff.
Thank you. Jeff actually started earlier. But, I just wanted to, right. I just wanted to mention that actually individual and group behavior was the only course I ever took at SOM while being at Yale. And this was really wonderful. And I wish I did pursue the joint program. I was at the time in the program of area studies at the graduate school. And I already had an international business degree from Europe. So I'm sorry I didn't pursue this a joint degree opportunity at the time, especially since I went on to teach for many years international business at Quinnipiac University. And on the subject of society and business, if that kind of issue came with my students, I would suggest, well, think about a business without on a deserted island, you know, to sort of bring you to a realization that this is part of what society is all about. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. And Monica, as I mentioned, is on our board of governors as well. Jeffrey, you want to say?
Thanks for your patience, and I didn't want to hog all the questions, but I wanted to ask. We certainly have, I think, proven the case that across the years and the vintages of the classes, we are all kind of the same, and we see it in ourselves. I think that's wonderful tonight. Talked about the students, we've talked about the professors. One thing that had a real impact on me were the adjunct folks that would come in and co-teach with the professors. And I would just love to get a tidbit. Like in my day, Marty Whitman and Ira Milstein were there. And you couldn't ask for more world-class investment legend and, you know, and antitrust and lawyer legend. And boy, what an impact they had. And there were others. So I'm just interested across the board, the older crowd, the newer crowd, still doing co-teaching, and any one or two names that really resonated for yourselves.
I almost mentioned Marty when I was speaking earlier, because he showed up on a sort of co-teaching, and then he ended up teaching, and his class was packed.
Yeah, I can actually
I was the TA for Marty's class, which meant I ordered the pizza at Modern. That's all I ever did.
I can think of two. So first, I had a very intense course called Wall Street to Washington, which was taught by Jeffrey Garden and Stephen Roach. So at that time, Jeffrey Garden had previously been dean, but you know, he had moved off to other pursuits, came back and was doing more research. Stephen Roach was the previous, I think, the chief economist for Morgan Stanley. And so they taught this course about that really just examined the interplay between Washington and Wall Street, and how markets and politics all interrelate in many ways to support, you know, the Main Street in the US. So there was that one. There was another one. This was called the CMO, and it's taught by Ravi Dar, who's one of the faculty legends. But he had a gentleman, I cannot think of his name, who was one of the top senior vice presidents at MasterCard in their marketing department. And so every week they would bring a different industry titan. And I think one week we had Steve Jobs' former CMO would come in. And so, you know, it was one of those courses that I honestly didn't know anything about until I got there. And many of the second years were telling people, like, even if you don't want to go into marketing, take this course, because you're going to be exposed to so many of these big picture thinkers who have moved markets over the years. So I know that there's many, many different examples of those type of courses.
Yeah, I can add a little bit to that. So there was a course that was also taught by Jeffrey Garten, different course. It was called Global Financial Centers. And it brought us on site to New York, London, Hong Kong, and Dubai, where we met with the local financial leaders in each of those areas. One of the classes for the New York class in particular was actually taught by Timothy Geithner directly. And so there were so many of those experiences. There was another course also by Jeffrey Garten, another one by Jeffrey Sonnenfeld, where similar to the course Tony mentioned, every week there was a new public company CEO that would come in and speak to the class and speak off the record, no holds barred. And so those were the type of experiences that were very common and very typical at SOM. But when you leave, you realize how rare and valuable all those experiences were.
I had an adjunct class. I don't remember. There was a lot of revolving doors, not titans, but they were entrepreneurs, and they clearly spoke to me because I basically, with the exception of 2 years in investment banking, have spent the rest of my life being an entrepreneur. And we presented ideas to them. You know, it was just a constant exchange about innovation and value, and identifying gaps and all of that sort of stuff. So it was life-changing for me, those adjuncts. Yep.
Thank you, Jill. Stephanie Grilly, we'll go to you next, but before we forget, because the hour is coming upon us, if you go to the chat, maybe Kate, you can share the link to the past Thursday night shows that we've been doing, now over 120, or Jeff, you can correct me. Jeff Feldman is largely behind these Thursday shows as part of our committee efforts to share information with alumni. But one of the things I wanted to mention just before you go, Stephanie, there's another group of alumni shows, one run by Accelerate Yale, and recently they had the founder of FedEx, Fred Smith, talking about his life, and he mentioned they were talking about his donation to Yale, which I believe was $100 million. And I thought what was interesting is that he sort of wanted Yale to have different disciplines involved in that donation. And I think they mentioned the School of Management as part of that. And maybe someone can correct me, but I know that there was that donation had to do with carbon capture, but I believe he requested Yale to sort of have a multidisciplinary approach to his research on carbon. But anyway, Stephanie, if you have some comments now.
Yeah. Well, there's not enough minutes left in the program because my question is a little broader and philosophical. My Yale degree is my PhD in the history of art, so I'm more of a cultural historian. And I sometimes think that we are living in the age of management. And, you know, it's interesting to see, you know, how pervasive, you know, it has become. I mean, management is endemic in our society. And it's one of those things that, you know, when it's good, it's very, very good. And when it's bad, it's horrid. And you know, this is the group that I really would love to hear your opinion. I mean, we all know of situations, you know, it's the classic joke where there's one guy digging the hole and 9 people telling him how to dig it. Or I'd like to get your thoughts on that idea. If in fact, you know, one could be the devil's advocate and say we're overmanaged. Or what do you see that sort of, you know, the idea as you are the top people in the field? I mean, what is the bane of your existence in terms of when management goes bad? It's a jump ball.
Anybody want to respond?
Yeah, happy to put some initial thoughts there. I think that when it goes well, you know, you almost have 2 different effects happening. One, people are just happier. You know, I think that they tend to have less of the stresses and less of the pressures of working in these. And I'm just using my past examples as talking points. But we work in these high stress, high pressure environments, and when we have good managers, we're able to deal with it a little bit better. We're able to be the best that we can be. If we're leading teams, we're able to better communicate outcomes. We're able to alleviate indecision, and we're able to ultimately help teams prioritize. When it's done poorly, all those things tend to back up. And I think it just creates this cognitive burden for, you know, in my case, working through middle management and with these aspirations to make it to higher levels of, in many ways, having to carry bad news or not being able to alleviate some of those concerns. So I'm a person who cares a lot about people. So living with the burdens of trying to solve problems where I just don't have the capabilities, just because I don't have the information or I don't have a person who's helping me make decisions. And I think a lot of it has to do with just the complexity of the way we work these days. And so with those complex layers, it often makes sense for us to have strong management to help. Now, I would agree there's in certain circumstances, you know, flatter is better, but that also comes with its own stresses, right? And so then that's about how can you compromise, how can you coordinate, how can you empower, how can you create clarity? And I think in all those cases, having a management education, whenever I've had to work in these highly flat orgs, has helped. So I think that it's typically beneficial, but I can certainly, when it's not done right, you know, it seems harmful.
I would second everything you said, Tony, and I would add that if you have a bad manager, the people tend to either underperform or leave. And so you will have an organization that begins to disintegrate. You know, in my career, I can think very specifically of one time when I left because of a particular manager. And then another time when I stayed because of a particular manager. So it makes all the difference. Especially I think when you're starting out, you know, after a while, you figure out how to deal with both ends. But it's vastly important. And people who are attuned to their team and to the other people in the organization are much more likely to get more out of the people that they are working with. And that was one of the things that certainly in my class, and I'm sure in every other class behind, was very much emphasized.
Yeah, I would just like to say, to add to your concept of management, that when I was at SOM, and especially with the organizational behavior emphasis, a lot of it was about leadership and leadership styles, and that within the same group, peer group, when there was not a hierarchy, you sort of like people evolved sort of inclusive or diverse thought leadership, task leadership, emotional leadership. And I really, as it's grown on me through my career, as I reflect on that, to have so many diverse voices that were coming from very different organizations and, you know, hashing it out in a small group, I really learned a lot. And I really agree with what Tony and Claudia said. It's like having a good leader, and I would maybe distinguish it, because a good leader can be a good manager, but there's a different, I guess, emphasis for me in leadership than management.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Does anybody have, we only have a brief moment before we sign off, but does anyone have any final closing comment from the panelists in particular? Otherwise, I will begin to wrap up with it. If not, I want to thank everyone once again, the panelists and the participants tonight, for showing up and helping us put this program together on behalf of the Yale Alumni Association and the Careers Life in Yale Committee of the Board of Governors. I'd like to thank everyone at SOM who helped put this show together, Matt Broder and Courtney Lightfoot. I'd like to thank the staff at YAA for helping put this together. Again, it's an honor to sort of meet all of you and be a part of this discussion. We who weren't at the SOM appreciate understanding better your experiences and your points of view. So, but before I do that, before I close out, I just want to do a quick plug, because another thing I do for Yale is I help with the local alumni in our little Hudson Valley here in New York. And if you want to come to Beacon and have a drink to discuss this further tomorrow night, you're welcome to do that in Beacon, New York.
Hey, Beacon.
Where my friend Elizabeth also lives, and Jeffrey Feldman might join us. But we'll be at 173 Main Street if you care to show up between 5 and 7:30 tomorrow night. And we can carry on this discussion further. But in any event, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us. Appreciate all of your experiences and comments tonight. And again, on behalf of the Yale Alumni Association and everyone who's a part of that, thank you for joining us tonight. And we'll see you next time. There's a program in early June as well. One last program for the academic year by the Careers Life in Yale program. I think it's
we do have summer programming coming, so stay tuned.
And summer programming as well. So thank you, everyone.
Great show.
Thank you, JC.
Thank you, Jill. Thank you, everyone on the panel tonight.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Claudia. Thank you, Faye, everyone. Thank you so much. Have a good night.